Meren of Clan Nel Tooth, a Golgari graveyard commander. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. And at the beginning of your end step, choose target creature card in your graveyard. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. And their usual common strategy with Meren is to outvalue all of your opponents, making creatures jump up and down from your graveyard back into play over and over, and make it possible to go all the way and shut all players out of the game. You go for a Stax Strategy and playing the actual card Smokestack, a really powerful artifact for 4 mana that reads: at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a SOT counter on Smokestack. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a permanent for each SOT counter on Smokestack. And what we have here is a Stax deck running a lot of Smokestack variations of cards, and then having your commander Meren to survive your own problems. But Meren also has a huge amount of combos that you can go for involving the graveyard. Let's start with looking at Triskelion and Walking Ballista together. Both of these two cards has one really interesting ability: remove a +1/+1 counter from it to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Now let's actually have them a little bit on the side, and let's look at Phyrexian Devourer, a really interesting, really weird artifact. A Phyrexian Devourer's power is 7 or greater, bury it. It has an activated ability: remove the top card of your library from the game to put +1/+1 counters on it equal to that card's converted mana cost. Now let's bring Necrotic Ooze into play. As long as Necrotic Ooze is on the battlefield, it has all activated abilities of all creature cards in all graveyards. And this means that Necrotic Ooze will have the Walking Ballista activated ability together with the Phyrexian Devourer's activated ability. So what you start by doing is removing maybe, let's say, your entire deck from the game and put +1/+1 counters onto Necrotic Ooze equal to the converted mana cost of all cards exiled this way. Remember, Necrotic Ooze only has activated abilities, and therefore it won't be killed by having a power higher than 7. And then let's bring Walking Ballista into action, that is lying there inside your graveyard as well. And then let's just remove +1/+1 counters from the Necrotic Ooze to go Gatling gun down all of your opponents. But if we are going to be playing Triskelion, we might as well put Mikaeos the Unhallowed into the deck as well. Legendary creature Zombie Cleric. Other non-human creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Undying. And that means that a creature card like Triskelion that can remove +1/+1 counters from itself to deal damage can now go infinite. Because what you do is that you use the last 2 counters on Triskelion to deal 2 damage to Triskelion itself, and that means that it's going to die and come back again with 4 +1/+1 counters, and now you can just machine gun down all of your opponents. And what Meren actually offers for this strategy is the ability to retry it once more. If you cast your Necrotic Ooze and someone uses a counterspell, Necrotic Ooze ends up inside your graveyard, and Lady Golgari, Master of Value, will resurrect it with enough experience counters and move it back into the battlefield, and then you can retry the combo once more. However, we need to talk about something really important. I did mention that these 3 artifacts needs to be inside the graveyard for Necrotic Ooze to actually function. So in other words, it's really terrible if they hang around inside your hand or being put into play. That's actually not that functional. Now, Walking Ballista can be cast for 0, and it will enter the battlefield as a 0/0, and it will pretty much kill itself. That's perfect. However, this world-eating machine will come into play for 6 mana, and it's a 1/1. That's quite terrible. The same with Triskelion. It's a 6 mana 1/1 that can actually deal 3 damage to a Hate Bear, Commander, or something else. That's great, that's functional. However, 6 mana is quite a lot still. In the end, all we really want is for these 2 artifacts to somehow end up inside the graveyard. And that is a bit tricky when they do cost this much mana. Now, in the beginning of the video, we did talk about that we were going to be playing Stax and playing the actual card that created the name for the archetype Stax, the name called Smokestack. But we're going to need more cards inside the deck that are doing something like the same thing. And let me show you something really perfect. Bottomless pit. During each player's upkeep, that player discards a card at random. And that makes it possible for us to discard this really expensive thing. But if we do accidentally discard Necrotic Ooze to this, Meren of Clan L-Tooth can bring it back into our hand, or if we have enough experience counters, put it into play. Now here is where I think the deck strategy and game plan is coming all together. All we need to do now is find out more cards that are going to fit perfect inside this strategy. So here we have a card called Delirium Schemes, 3 mana sorcery. Each player discards 3 cards. This is going to be perfect inside this deck because we're bursting out a condition, a problem for our opponents to discard 3 cards they rather have inside their hand. However, we are going to be discarding our combo cards that we rather have inside our graveyard. Then we have Smallpox, 2 mana sorcery. Each player loses a life. Yeah, discards a card, that's good. Sacrifice a creature, that's also good. Then sacrifice a land, that's perfect. Smallpox is going to be great inside Meren. And then we have Mind Swords, 2 mana sorcery. If you control a swamp, you may sacrifice a creature instead of paying Mind Swords mana cost. And what it does is, each player removes 2 cards in his or her hand from the game. This is going to be good for this strategy. Do remember, however, that you're going to exile cards by this, not discard. So that means that you have to sacrifice 2 cards from your hand permanently. However, all other opponents have to do the same thing. I also think that Tassiger's Cruelty could be good because you could probably just delve it down to 1 black mana and force each opponent to discard 2 cards. I think that is actually going to be functional. And if you want to keep on going on this hardcore force your opponent to discard card things, Unnerve is something that could function here. 4 mana each of your opponents choose and discard 2 cards. Now Tassiger's Cruelty and Unnerve doesn't affect you. That's actually quite good. Now there are a lot more examples of cards that force your opponent to keep on discarding cards and drain them out of the game. And eventually you're going to have so many cards inside the deck that is offering any form of this option that makes sure that you're continuously going to prevent people from having cards inside their hand. In any case, you don't need to go on every single one that I'm showing you, but in the end I think that you should stay away from Necropotence, because look at the card text down here. Whenever you discard a card, remove that card from the game, and that means that you're going to destroy yourself, and your commander Meren, the Golgari queen, can't really resurrect things from the graveyard if they are in exile because of Necropotence. Therefore, if you're going for this kind of discard strategy, we should definitely stay out of Necropotence. Please do remember, however, that we only want the big Phyrexian machine to hit the graveyard through this gimmicky way, but we could also use a great tutor for that, namely Entomb. 1 black mana instant speed. Search your library for a card and put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. And that means that we can use Entomb to put Phyrexian Devourer straight into our graveyard, and that's just perfect. However, I also recommend highly Bazaar of Baghdad, a really strong land. Tap to take 2 cards from... tap, draw 2 cards, then discard 3 cards. That is basically what Bazaar of Baghdad does. And that is basically the strongest loot card inside the entire format. And Bazaar of Baghdad fits perfectly into graveyard strategies, into graveyard decks. And this is truly one big graveyard deck. Looting through your deck, finding your combo cards and then putting them into your graveyard. Great! Now mentioning Bazaar of Baghdad comes with great timing, because we can go for a different line. Instead of the Staxy line forcing everyone to discard cards, we can choose cards like Grisly Salvage. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or land card among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. And this is going to fill up our graveyard with a lot of cards and potentially the combo cards that we are looking for, and then just cast Meren and resurrect Necrotic Ooze with everything inside the graveyard. But there are a lot more cards that has this kind of ability that will eventually just put your entire grave deck into your graveyard. Like Mulch, staying on turn, casting Mulch, gaining a lot of land cards into our hand, and then eventually putting more creature cards inside our graveyard. But also, we can play the control card Drowning Filth. Shows target creature. Put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then that creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each land card inside your graveyard. Now, depending on your preference and how you actually like to play your deck and play the game, you should choose one of these two lines. Either you go for a more control-y, stacksy discard line, forcing everyone to discard cards with Smallpox, Delirium Schemes and Bottomless Pit. Or you go for a more faster combo line, choosing to play Grisly Salvage, Grapple with the Past, Moves, Drowning Filth. This line is probably a lot faster, however lacking the potential of control and stability. I also think that this line would really enjoy Life from the Loam and that you focus it more onto lands. In any case, the line that I'm going to show is this one, the more stacksy and controlly one, and in my tapped out page you're probably gonna find that I'm playing these cards and not the other ones. Now the rest of the deck is pretty much just typical Meren staples, like Merciless Executioner and Flashback Marauder of course. But in any case, I'm also playing Waste Not, due to the fact that I'm forcing my opponents to discard a lot of cards and turning Waste Not into a great card drawing engine. But also, I do think that Shouldered, the Whispering one, is quite decent and quite good, due to the fact that I can somehow eventually have enough experience counters to resurrect Shouldered from my graveyard and turning this into a great Stax piece. But also, giving me another sacrificial outlet, Tabernacle of the Pinnacle Veil is quite good. It also puts a Stax effect onto my opponents, while giving me a death outlet, a way for my creatures to die. That also, I think, Diabolic Intent is quite good, due to the fact that it gives me also a way to sacrifice creatures to search my library for Necrotic Ooze. And then of course Attrition. I do think Attrition is a good value card for disruption. Make my creatures die, and then just sitting there and remove creature by creature and grinding my opponents out of the game. Let's also just look at these two cards, Birthing Pod and Protean Hulk, a value Hulk I might say, because these two cards are great tutors to search the library for hate bears or combo creature cards that you need to put onto the battlefield. Quite good. I might actually say that we can't really do any big shenanigans with the Protean Hulk due to the fact that we don't play Flash, because we don't have the color identity of blue, but we can still discard Protean Hulk and eventually resurrect it for some great value once we sacrifice it. However, this is where this tutorial is hitting its finishing line. I hope you have grasped the concept and my take on the Meren of Clan of Neltooth. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this video and take care.